Simple interest formula. As we have studied before, interest is money that is either charged or earned for the use of money. When you put money into a bank savings account, the bank pays interest to you. The bank in turn uses your money and loans it to someone else at a higher rate of interest. Simple interest is interest that is paid strictly on the original amount, an unchanging principal. Let's look at an example. The bank charged Nancy 12% for borrowing $2,000 for 2 years. What was the interest Nancy had to pay? Let's review the terms we know from before. Interest is the amount in dollars. In this case, Nancy is borrowing, so she's going to have to pay interest on $2,000. Principal is the amount that is loaned or borrowed. So the $2,000 is the principal. The rate is the percent that is charged or earned for the money. In this case, it's charged because she's borrowing, and that would be the 12%. Time is in years, and she's going to borrow this money for 2 years. Our formula, interest equals principal times rate times time. So if we take these numbers, we know the interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. Our principal is $2,000. Our rate is 12%. Remember, if you're not using a calculator, you'll need to use 0.12 here. And then we have to multiply that by 2 years. 2,000 times 0.12 times 2, our interest would be $480. Remember, we're talking about money, so we have to label it dollar signs. If you don't use the calculator, once again, make that 12% 0.12. So this was the principal times the rate times the time, and we have $480. Let's look at a few more examples. In these cases, the interest will already be given, and you will have to find the principal, rate, or time. You need to know that we can use our interest formula and manipulate it to give us those answers. Let's look at the formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. Algebraically, we can change this to solve for principal, rate, and time, and we're going to do that. First, we want the time formula. Since we need to solve for time, we want that t left there by itself. In order to do that, I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by the principal and the rate. When I do that, the principal and the rate drop out, isolating that t by itself, and that's what we want. So we now have a formula for time that says interest divided by principal times rate. So if we get a problem, for example, let's say Joan borrowed $600 from the bank. She has 16% interest, and she paid $144 in interest. How long did it take her to pay that loan back? We now know we're looking for time. How long? So we're missing the time. She borrowed $600 at 16%, and she's paying $144 in interest. Her interest is the $144. The principal is $600 times the rate of 16%. Remember, this is 144 divided by these two multiplied. If you're using the calculator, you can use 16%. If not, use 0.16. Either way, your time will come out to be 1.5 years it took Joan to pay this money back. So it does not matter if you're looking for time, principal, rate, interest. We can manipulate this formula for the way you'd like it. We have done that for time. Let's continue. What if the rate was missing? When I go to this next example, I start out with that same algebraic formula, but now I want to isolate the r, the rate. So that means I have to divide by the principal and the time. And whatever I do to one side of an equation, I must do to the other. principal and time cancel out, leaving the r all by itself, and that's what we want. So our formula for rate is interest divided by principal times time. When we go to a second example here, let's say Bob deposited $2,000 in the bank and earned $120 interest in 1.5 years. What rate was he getting? What was the percent? We don't know, but we can find out because the interest he earned, 120, divided by his principal times the time, 1.5 years. If we were to solve this problem, whether using the calculator or by hand, your rate on the calculator will come out to be 0.04. Remember, that's 4%. So we know that if Bob put $2,000 in the bank for 1.5 years and earned $120 interest, we can find his percent. His rate of interest is 4%. But what if we want to know the principal? We come over here, we can do the same thing. We want to isolate the principal. At this point, you can guess that we're going to divide both sides of the equation by rate and time, making those cancel out, isolating the principal by itself. So our principal formula is interest divided by rate times time. We have this formula, and now we can take an example problem. Ken and Sue have earned $202.50 in 1.5 years at 9% interest. How much money did they put in the bank? Let's find out. They earned $202.50. Their rate was 9%. Remember, without a calculator, that's 0.09. The time was 1.5 years. After you do your calculations, you will find that they started out with $1,500 in the bank. So even though our interest formula started out as interest equals principal times rate times time, you can manipulate that to be time equals, rate equals, or principal equals in order to solve any simple interest problem.
This is a bank. We need banks for saving our money, obtaining loans, writing checks, and for many other services. However, we need to use our math skills when we handle our money. If you do, you can save lots of money. Let's look at some credit card and mortgage problems. Let's look at this problem. Ted owes the credit card company $4,500. He has to pay $62.50 finance charges every month. What interest rate is the credit card company charging Ted? Now you know the interest rate formula is interest equals principal times rate times time. So the question is, what interest rate, the R? So what we want to do is isolate the R in this formula. So we divide each side by principal and time. This cancels out, so R equals interest divided by principal time. Now let's just plug in the numbers. But before we do that, notice the charge is $62.50 finance charges every month. And the interest rate is always listed as APR, annual percentage rate. And annual means yearly. So we have to multiply $62.50 times 12. So the interest rate is $750 divided by the principal, which is $4,500, multiplied by time, which is 1 year. So that would stay the same. So we have to divide 750, divide by 4,500, and that equals 0.166, and we'll just round it up to 0.17. And to find the equivalency in percentage, we just move the decimal point 2 places or multiply by 100. That will equal 17%. So Ted is paying the credit card company 17%, or $750 every year. Now, think about that. Now, you know, I get many offers in the mail for credit cards. And these are my personal ones. I have a few of them because I've got a few businesses. But one thing I never do what Ted is doing here. I never have any finance charges. That's a tremendous amount of money, interest rate of 17%, paying every month. The secret is get ahead. Try to save this money somehow. Don't go and buy things that you don't really need. Buy something cheaper and try to avoid these finance charges. I've done it for many years. It's a disciplined lifestyle, but you'll save tremendous amount of money. And some people go $4,500, even higher. So be intelligent. Use your math skills. Let's look at one more problem. Problem number 2. Finance charges, $95 a month. Interest rate, 16% APR, or annual percentage rate. So we have to convert this then, this monthly finance charge of $95 to a yearly rate. So we multiply 95 times 12 equals $1,140 a year for this charges. Now we want to find out what is the principal. So the formula is interest equals principal times rate times time. So we want to isolate the principal here. So divide each side by rate times time. So P now equals interest divided by rate over time. And we know what the interest rate charge is, so P equals is 1140 divided by the rate, which is 16%. And to convert that, all we have to do is move the decimal point over here 2 places. So it's 0.16, and it's 0.16, and it's for 1 year, so that stays the same. So all we have to do is divide $1,140, divide that by 0.16. That equals $7,125. So the principal for this loan, as we found out, is $7,125.